Hi, and welcome to this edition of ThePrint's Crosshairs, where we discuss the major foreign policy and strategic issue of the week. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. With me today, I have my colleague Pia Krishnankutty, who's been covering India-Afghanistan relations as well as Pakistan for some time. And of course, our special guest, Daud Khattak, who's with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and also reports for the Pashto language Radio Mashal. Daud is among the world's leading experts on Afghanistan and has written a great volume of expert and scholarly work on things like the Taliban Pakistan. So just to bring us up to speed, if I may, Pia, my first question really is, we've seen a lot of fairly dramatic developments happening in Afghanistan over the last few days, shooting on the Durand Line. We've had clashes between terrorists and the Pakistan army. Where is India at today in terms of this relationship? A trade fair going on in Delhi, some talk about reaching out to the Taliban. But where are things really in terms of people-to-people outreach and diplomatic engagement?
So with regard to people-to-people outreach, the first thing that comes to my mind is the e-visas that the Indian government initiated when the Taliban takeover took place last year. And these are, of course, unconfirmed numbers, but to my mind, the rollout of those e-visas has been fairly slow. The Home Ministry has not issued many visas. I think they would be in the couple of hundreds sort of ballpark. And that's reflective in maybe a concern in New Delhi about terrorism in the region following the Taliban takeover. So even though India was one of the first countries to sort of offer this emergency visa route to Afghans who are still trapped in Afghanistan, that rollout has been slow. With regard to the trade fair you just mentioned, so every year the Commerce Ministry in India holds a trade fair in Pragati Maidan, and I went there 2 days ago during the inauguration of the event, and I met many Afghan traders, as I usually do. Even last year there were a few Afghan traders, and what it seems to be is that the Afghan traders who are sort of participating in this fair are actually Afghans who have lived in India for many decades, many years.
Okay.
They are not Afghans who have come from Afghanistan. And from what I hear, I mean, this is based on only the opinion of one trader there. He said that there were, in fact, a lot of his friends who are also traders in Afghanistan who were planning to come for this fair, but their visas didn't come through. So instead, they have sent their dry fruits, and their Indian staff here are at this fair sort of selling those dry fruits consignments.
Interesting. So despite all this talk of a diplomatic thaw, maybe diplomatic recognition, still on the ground things slow.
Yes, people-to-people outreach is slow. What we're seeing on ground is slow, and a lot of these e-visas that have been issued are mostly to Afghan Sikhs and Afghan Hindus.
Who are coming for refuge, basically, would that be correct?
Yes, who are coming for refuge, and also there was the Gurudwara attack a few months ago, and the Sikh community in Afghanistan wrote to PM Modi, so that became a conflagration, and I think the government had to respond at that point. So then we saw a lot of these Afghan Sikhs coming in at that point of time. But from what we're seeing on the ground, there is still perhaps more that India can do, and for whatever concerns there are in New Delhi, those are not being carried out.
So Daud, this is where I want to come to you. And a year ago, in many capitals, there was a lot of optimism, including in Islamabad, saying, oh, the Taliban is here, now slowly things will fall in place, everything will be normalized slowly, trade and normal relationships will resume. And you were one of the very few people at that time who was quite skeptical about this sort of vision of the future. Where do things stand now? We've just seen shooting on the Durand Line, lot of terrorism. Why haven't things played out as maybe Islamabad thought they would play out?
Thank you, Swami Sahib, and it's a pleasure to be here with you on this panel. So far, the few days ago incident is concerned at Chaman border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. That is one of the few busiest borders. and the people movements on the two borders, Chaman and Torkham. Torkham is number one and Chaman is number two, and then there are some other routes, but these are the two major trade routes. So far, Taliban are saying that the person who opened firing on the Pakistani security guards, means the Epsiode frontier corps soldiers, that was not from the Taliban. And Pakistan is also making a kind of awkward demand from the Taliban to arrest the person and hand him over to Pakistan. That is the incident that happened. And the border is, when I'm speaking to you right now, so the border is closed till this time. But I think this is whatever is happening over the past 1 year between Pakistan and Afghanistan, I mean Taliban-ruled Afghanistan now. This incident is nothing. It's a very, very small incident. We have seen it on the border with Cunard in eastern Afghanistan. Pakistan is joining border in Bajaur area. If I take you back to the Khost incident where the Pakistani jets bombarded some areas inside Afghanistan, and I think then I will take you back again to the Cunard province where the Taliban commanders are threatening the Pakistani soldiers that we will be happier to fight you than fighting the Jews, like quote unquote, in Pashto language. He is challenging them. So that is the situation on the side, and that's all about the optimism that the takeover of the Taliban on August 15 last year, that was welcomed in some of the international capitals and particularly in Pakistan. So the outcome is like this. There are many fault lines, and I think in the course of discussion you may raise your questions and I will go one by one, but there are many fault lines. Yeah.
So the first question I'd like to ask you on these fault lines, Daud Sahab, is that in the general impression was that the Taliban leadership is very close to the ISI, that there are very good ties, and that the ISI also had a good relationship with many of the jihadi commanders who call themselves the TTP or the TTP umbrella of groups. And the optimism in Islamabad was that, look, people we have done business with for a long time are now in power. We can settle up with the TTP. General Faiz Hamid was supposed to have a dialogue going on with the TTP and the Taliban. Why hasn't it worked out? What has gone wrong?
Well, the very first thing is that Taliban was something when it was a purely fighting force, fighting against the NATO forces, the US forces, ISAF forces. At that time, Pakistan and Taliban interests were converging. But now, when the Taliban have taken over Kabul, so it doesn't seem like the same unity group. There are, when I'm saying fault lines, so the fault lines are now emerging. Some are pro-Pakistan, some are anti-Pakistan. Some have their sympathies with Iran, others have their sympathies with India. I mean, with India, I mean, some of them want to have good relations with India. But then some who are the pro-Pakistanis, they say, no, we don't have. Then there is the Shia-Sunni fault line. So some want some sort of relation with Iran, then the Arab countries. So there is a sort of, we are calling it like a kind of neo-great game here in this land. Then some of them have their closer ties with the Pakistani Taliban, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. But others, they want to get rid of them. Means the pro-Pakistani Taliban, means the Afghan Taliban, they want to get rid of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or at least to push them out of Afghanistan and force and nudge them somehow to agree for a peace agreement with Pakistan. But then there are some other groups who say, no, we fought a jihad for Islamic Sharia, and how can we force them now not to fight the same jihad, quote unquote, against Pakistan? So these fault lines, and I think expectation from a purely militant group that it will stay like it will continue to follow the same lines when it is fighting and when it is in power. I think this is something too much that the Pakistanis were expecting from the Taliban. And what I'm seeing, I think that the situation, instead of going in the right direction, I think it will worsen. Because if you have followed the situation in the Pakistani tribal areas, only yesterday, 6 Pakistani policemen in Lucky Marwat district, which is located on the periphery with Waziristan region, they were killed. 2 military personnel were killed yesterday in Bajaur. There was another attack. So the TTP is gradually increasing its stakes. That means its presence is everywhere. And Pakistan is not going to stay silent. The other fault line is like whatever is happening on the political front in Pakistan. So far they are silent, but I think at some point things will like going to the bursting point.
I'm going to come back to that question in just a second, Daud sir. But Pia, I wanted to ask you, you've followed Indian sort of thinking on this as it's evolved over recent months. And within the Indian establishment, there seem to be 2 points of views. On the one hand, as you've pointed out, a great deal of concern over security to the point of being, obsessively tight about visas. You'd reported on the tragic case of a young Indian woman who couldn't come back with a husband and child. But others in the establishment who seem to think that these, if you like, more anti-Pakistani Taliban groups can be leveraged to form the basis of some kind of relationship. I know it's very difficult to give a definitive answer, but do you think India is still optimistic about establishing some kind of relationship? Or on the basis of what you've seen, is it kind of stepping back to wait and see how things go?
So I think it's difficult to say with regard to whether we can leverage these anti-Pakistani factions. But from what I see on the ground, it's still a tentative sort of response. Also, there's a lot of domestic churn in Pakistan itself. And I think maybe the Indian establishment wants to see how that plays out also before maybe approaching something like that. So I think it's difficult to say now, but we should also just pay attention to what's happening on ground, whether it's the e-visas, whether it's like trying to get some of our citizens who are trapped in Afghanistan back into India. Why is that not happening as easily, or why is there not enough political push behind certain cases like that?
Daud, on what's happening in Pakistan itself, an extremely muddy and confused picture. Do you believe that this ongoing sort of political struggle on the one hand, but also some of the divisions it seems to have thrown up within the Pakistan army, what kind of impact will they have on the picture in Afghanistan? So we did have, General Faiz Hamid having some kind of conversation. Then there was some talk that this would shift to a political level. But now everything seems up in the air and very, very unclear. I was hoping you could cast some light on this.
That is a very interesting question, and thank you for asking this, because what I'm seeing right now, I believe that okay, well and good, something is happening in a corner of the Foreign Office about Afghanistan, but in a corner, because if we look at Pakistan's Afghan policy, so it is mostly controlled by the Pakistani military. That is an open secret. If we now take the 3 situations and analyze it, one is Afghan Taliban and the situation in Afghanistan, and then the situation on the Pakistani border. The second, we take the situation from the Pakistani politics. And the third, which is connected with whatever is happening inside the Pakistani military. Right. We know very clearly about the political situation, somehow very clearly about the situation in Afghanistan. The situation inside the army is still wrapped in mystery, but if we go by the informed analysis from Islamabad, so no one will deny that something is happening. There are groupings on the basis of analysis. So together with the political situation, which is connected with, if we assume whatever is happening inside the army till the appointment of the new army chief, the focus is not where it should be regarding Afghanistan. Maybe someone will be thinking, but so far the long-term strategies are concerned and a policy is concerned, how to tackle this situation, how to deal with that situation, how to deal with the Afghanistan situation, or with the border situation with the TTP, which is already re-emerged. It is not re-emerging, already re-emerged. The only thing now remaining is to take control of some specific space, for example, a district or a town or a village. So I think there is lack of an approach how to deal with this very quickly. At one point, they started the peace negotiation with the TTP, but that peace negotiation is now, I think it's almost over. The only person who is defending this peace negotiation is a spokesman for the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government, a little known person who has no political background, just came on the umbrella and stopped there as a spokesman. He is defending, and he is defending because this is his job. Otherwise, the peace negotiation is no more. There is a complete deadlock. Taliban are attacking people. And if you look at the diplomatic relations with the Afghan Taliban, so if I go back, like if I count it from the past 30 days, I don't think that any top level delegation visited from that side to Islamabad or from this side to Kabul. So I think you can easily assume now that what is going on here on the policy and strategy level.
That actually reminded me that Pakistan's NSA wanted to come to Kabul in Jan, and then he cancelled it because of these anti-Pakistan sentiments, and so we keep seeing visits scheduled and then cancelled also. But I also wanted to ask you, Daud, in 2001, Pakistan was one of the only 3 countries in the world, apart from Saudi Arabia and UAE, to recognize the Taliban as the leaders of Afghanistan. And though this time around we've seen, Imran Khan saying Afghans have been freed from the shackles of slavery, when do you think we can expect to see, or will we even expect to see, a formal recognition of the Taliban from Pakistan?
When they're not from the international community.
Not from the international community, but what about Pakistan?
Pakistan is recently coming out of the FATF list, right? That's one thing. Secondly, I think you are well aware about the economy, what is happening. Pakistan hardly managed to avoid a kind of default. And now they were at the doors of the IMF asking for money. So that money came. Then the political situation is very, very unstable, and it will continue to stay unstable at least till the middle of next year. Then, as Swami Sahib mentioned, there are rumors about something happening inside the military. So in all this situation, keeping all these situation, how can we expect that going against the US, going against Europe, going against NATO countries, even going against the Arab countries, they are not as supportive as they were in 2001, back in the 90s. It's impossible for Pakistan to unilaterally say that, okay, we are going to recognize the Taliban. In 2001 or in the 1996, I guess, that was another kind of situation. Pakistan, since that time till 2022, and since NATO came into Afghanistan, Pakistan was accused of double game by no other than the top US military generals like Mike Mullen and the president like Donald Trump openly. But in 1996, it was a little bit different. Pakistan was involved in the Afghan jihad, but it was not the way, like the criticism was not coming the way. Now they are open. So I think it will be very difficult for Pakistan to recognize the Taliban. And then we also must see that what the Taliban are doing. Girls' schools in Mazar-e Sharif or Herat, those are open there. But in Kandahar, going of girls to school is un-Islamic. Every day there is a new order from the reclusive chief, Hebdullah Khunzada, and he's saying something new. Like yesterday, he was telling the judges that you have to implement the hudud anyway, means chopping of hands and all these things. So I think it will be very difficult.
Daud Saab, if I may take this in a slightly Indian direction, I know you've written about this a lot in the past. The Taliban was always an umbrella for all kinds of other jihadi groups from the region and from Pakistan, as an umbrella to protect them. You had people from Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Qaeda, many Central Asian groups, all grouped over there. And we've had United Nations reports over the years saying that, all these people are still there, getting shelter, providing some expertise. But we have not seen so far anyway any sort of regional resurfacing of violence in a significant way outside the TTP itself. Do you believe that the Taliban will keep a lid on these regional groups or that this is uncontrollable and once again these things will start to emerge because of the weakening of political authority in Pakistan?
Well, the first thing is that let me go first to Daesh, or the so-called Islamic State. That group is not like in alliance with the Taliban, rather they are like against each other. Daesh is there. And with the coming of the Taliban, or even before that, Afghanistan was pretty rich ground for them. They may have their recruitment from the universities in Pakistan and colleges in Pakistan, but they are using the Afghan soil is like hiding and breeding ground there. Second thing is that so far, if you are pointing to the Kashmir-focused jihadi groups from Pakistan, so I think Jaish-e-Mohammed and the former Lashkar-e-Taiba and then Jamaat al-Dawa, Hafiz Saeed is in jail and that group. But those people, some of those like Asmatullah Muawiyah, who was known as the Punjabi Taliban, long before he said that, okay, we are not going to fight and we will be going in. Now he is a peaceful man. The only person who is out of jail right now, and Pakistan recently said that he is going to Afghanistan, and then Taliban quickly denied it, that he is not there. He is a Pakistani national. That was
Masood Azhar, of course.
But their people, either they are in hiding right now, or they are merged, or they are hiding with the other groups somehow. So far the TTP is concerned, I think it's because of that is the only group that we have seen that group is emerging, and TTP is emerging and it is getting step by step to more strength. It has attained more strength than before. If you go back to 2008 and 2009 till 2014, I think they are more, because many smaller groups, even sectarian groups, they merged in the TTP under the leadership of Mufti Nur Wali Masood. Then the other groups that groups like Ansarullah, which is focused on Central Asia, or the group like ETIM, Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement. I think on those groups, Taliban have put a lid under pressure from the China. And that was long before the taking over of Kabul. They were pushed to a corner. At one point, the ETIM people, there were reports that they are joining the Daesh, because they were under pressure from the Taliban. But then they did not find a kind of policy convergence, or some problems were there. So they did not join, I think. So they are also now like under a kind of control.
So I think we're coming close to the end of our time, but a fairly disturbing picture there from Daud Khattak, because much of what he is saying directly challenges the assumption I think many have made that slowly Afghanistan is going to inch towards some kind of normalcy and reintegration. Certainly the signs of violence coming out of Pakistan's broad northwest, with the resurfacing of the TTP becoming a major concern for Pakistan itself, and could have enormous consequences for the whole region. Thank you all for watching Crosshairs. Thank you, Daud Khattak, who, as I said, is here from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Radio Mashal. Thank you, Pia, once again for joining in and helping this conversation. Goodbye. See you next weekend.
Thank you.